Hello everyone, DJ Gez here. Ever since I bought my car, I've spent a lot of time modifying and upgrading it for better lap times. And one of the things that's always bothered me is the fact that whenever you do a modification to your car, you never know exactly what kind of change you're going to see on your autocross lap. And you can look and do research and see what other people say, like, oh, this worked better than that, but you never truly know. And that got me thinking. I've done a lot of autocrossing, and I've had quite a few events before and after I've done modifications. So I thought, why don't I take all the results, look at all the times before and after modifications, adjust everything for a 60-second lap, and then also look at how my times change compared to everyone else, because people are relatively consistent drivers at autocross events, and there's usually over 100 people, so that's a lot of data to work with. So I thought I could go and make a really good list that shows exactly the modification that I did to my car and how that affected my lap time for a 60-second autocross lap time. And then I thought what could be really helpful is to go one step further and say, let's look at how much of a change in time something made per the dollar spent. So that way people can go and see, I could spend 10 grand building an engine, or I could spend $200 on brake pads, and they do the same thing. So obviously just go with the brake pads. So I thought that could be really helpful for you guys. So here you go. Here is my specific list of modifications that will affect a 60-second autocross lap time for a BRZ specifically. Sorry, had to do it. So the first modification that I did to my car was I replaced the brake pads and rotors. These together cost me about $600, and I added the StopTech Sport slotted cryogenic rotors with the Hawk HP Street 5 brake pads, and these made a difference of 0.4 of a second. And again, this is a 60-second autocross lap time, and I'm comparing it to other people, so about 100 other people that are always at these events and are pretty consistent drivers. And I've also included data from other BRZ users that did similar upgrades. So that's how I'm going to compare the stock times to the modifications throughout this list. The next set of modifications I did was I upgraded the intake and added pulleys to my car. So I spent around $600 using all Perrin products. So Perrin cold air intake with the Perrin hose, the crank pulleys, and accessory pulleys. And here I saw slight dyno differences. Not even as much as power, just as much as the bands looked a little different. But as far as actual lap times, I saw no difference in intake and pulleys. And then for the next modification, this one's a little confusing. So what I did was I added a supercharger, which was the Edelbrock E-Force. And it was great, except for it caused a rod to go through my engine and catch the car on fire. And luckily we had a fire extinguisher to put it out, so that saved me there. But afterwards, I was still determined to have a supercharged car, so I had the engine built up so that it could handle more boost. So what I did was the internals were upgraded with King XP Performance bearings, rod bearings, the Skunk 2 Pro connecting rods. I had the engine board and cord. So all in all, I ended up spending around 10 grand getting this engine built, and then the additional 5 grand for the supercharger, and then another 2 grand for the install and tune. So all in all, we're looking at around $16,000. So that's almost the price of the entire car I paid again, just so I could have what ended up being an 88 horsepower difference from stock. And even though that would probably be a really good number for like drag racing, it only made 0.7 of a second difference on an autocross course. So this is going to be one of those modifications where, again, we're not going to see that much different in time compared to how much it cost me. The next upgrade, it's just like the intake, but the exhaust. I added the Perrin full exhaust with the Tamiya front pipe and header, and this full system cost me around $2,500. And I saw horsepower differences, but I did not see any time differences as far as autocross times. After that, I replaced the rims and tires, and these are still street tires, for instance, and I paid $840 for the Enki tuning Rajans. They were an inch wider than the stock rims and tires, and they're also 4 pounds lighter. And then I also spent $600 to swap out to the Hankook Vantage RS tires, and these rims and tires combined gave me a difference of 0.6 of a second. And then over time, when my tires wore out and I replaced them, I switched to the Pirelli P0 PZ4 Sport tires, and that gave me 0.7 of a second difference. So then I got smart and I decided, let's get a new set of rims that's going to go even an inch wider, which was the Enki Racing RPF1. And then let's put non-DOT legal autocross tires. And those were the Hankook Vantage Z214 tires. And they cost around $900. And these rims and tires combined did a whopping 2.1 second difference from stock. So far, this has been by far the best modification as far as times. And then it's also pretty good price-wise if, again, you compare it to the built engine with Supercharger. After that, I bought fully adjustable coilovers for $1,600. And these were the BC Racing DS series with Swift springs. And these made a difference of 1.8 seconds. And then when I spent $250 to get it properly corner balanced and performance aligned, that made an additional 0.3 of a second difference. And then with that, I also bought sway bars and adjusted them correctly, and that did an additional 0.3 of a second difference. I also forgot to mention that these were the white line sway bars, 22 millimeters in the front at its softest setting, with 18 millimeters in the back, also at its softest setting. Next, this isn't my data, but I knew a few people who went with the white line full bushing pack to switch to polyurethane bushings. It cost them a total of $950, and we saw a little difference among all the data, but I decided to give it 0.1 of a second because I saw a difference, but it wasn't that big a difference. And that also went for a few people went the cheap route and just bought the Energy Suspension Master set of polyurethane bushings, and that cost $250. And that, again, I saw barely a difference, so I put 0.1 on here. And then what isn't looked at as a modification, but actually is one of the most important things you can do, especially for the price, is to do weight reduction. Because if you got just a track car, taking out, your seats, your rear tire, some tools, your washing fluid, etc., these are all things that can cut your weight down and make a big difference, time-wise. So I saw a few people who went kind of insane on the weight reduction. They were able to get about 111 pounds off their stock weight, and that alone made a difference of 0.9 of a second. So to sum up all the data we just saw, this is a chart showing the difference in times from stock. And you can see right away that things that made the biggest difference are having the race rims and tires, not the DOT street legal ones, but the actual race autocross only tires. And then also having the fully adjustable coilovers made a huge difference. And then the Supercharger was kind of something, the brake pads did a little something, and the weight reduction did a little something. But then urethane bushings, the corner balance, the sway bars, the intake and pulleys, the full exhaust, they didn't really make any difference at all. So now I have this add-on, this overlay of time over cost. So this is saying how much time you save per dollar of each one of these modifications. And I'm overlaying that from the chart we just saw. And you can still see that the race rims and the coilovers are making a big difference as far as your cost per dollar. And when you look, again, the Supercharger with built engine, that almost gave us a full second, which is actually not that bad. But then when you look at the cost, it's like way down, because it just costs way too much for that modification. And then we also see that brake pads and rotors did pretty well. The corner balance and sway bars did fairly well. And then weight reduction, it's actually off the chart because, again, it doesn't cost anything. So it's infinite. It's an exponential value. And that is as much of a list as I can make with the data that I had. But please, if you guys have data for BRZs or other cars showing exactly how modifications made a difference compared to other people, please feel free to comment and let me know. I'd maybe like to make this a regular thing of showing how modifications can change other cars so that people can start buying the right things and not be spending overloads of money buying things that don't make much of a difference. But if you like this content, please like and subscribe, and I hope you all really enjoyed this video, and have a good one out there.